The first time Simon Drake walked into my tattoo shop, I smelled ash. Not smoke. Not something burning. Ash the way memory burns, after the fire is gone, and you're the only one still coughing. My hand didn't slip. That mattered. Stay still, I told the client in my chair, my voice calm, clipped, professional. The hum of the tattoo machine was steady. Familiar. Safe. If you twitch, I charge extra. If you break the circle, I charge double, and you might invite something with opinions. The kid laughed, a brittle sound. You're serious? I glanced at the faint silver markings chalked under the chair legs. Protective circles layered with quiet magic. They pulsed softly, like breathing. I'm never not serious about containment, I said. Breathe. You're almost done. The bell above the door chimed. My spine tightened before my mind caught up. The scent hit me. Dry, bitter, unmistakable. Ash, cold and old, curling through the antiseptic and incense like it had always belonged there. Like it had been waiting its turn. I finished the final stroke, lifted the needle cleanly, and wiped the ink from the client's skin. Only then did I look up. He stood just inside the door, rain-dark coat buttoned neatly, posture. Relaxed in that way that only people with authority ever manage. Not loose. Not tense. Balanced. His eyes were a pale, unsettling gray-blue. Clean, sharp, observant. Alpha. Obviously. But the dominance wasn't loud. It didn't push. That was worse. Shop's open, I said dryly, peeling off my gloves. But if you're here to ask for a butterfly tattoo with your girlfriend's name, I don't do ironic regret pieces. A corner of his mouth twitched. Barely. I'll keep that in mind. He didn't step deeper, didn't challenge the threshold wards. Smart. I'm Simon Drake, he said. Special Investigations Unit. Of course he was. Congratulations, I replied. You win a free pamphlet on city zoning laws. I'm looking for Ash. I gestured at myself with the discarded glove. Just Ash. His gaze flicked, not at my face, but around the shop. The recessed lighting. The wards woven subtly into inked geometry on the walls. The scent layers. The rain sliding down the large glass windows at the front, blurring the city into streaked reflections. You work late, he said. People bleed on inconvenient schedules. Behind me, my client shifted. Should I be worried? No, I said without looking back. If anything dangerous shows up, you'll feel warm right before you pass out. Very cozy. Comforting, the kid muttered. Simon gave him a polite nod. You can finish up. I'll wait. There was no demand in his tone. No pressure. That, too, was worse. When the client finally left, wrapped, instructed, trembling slightly, I locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. Simon didn't comment. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You've got 5 minutes. He reached into his coat, not quickly, not theatrically, and pulled out a tablet. Set it on the counter between us like an offering. We have a situation, he said. And I believe you can help us understand it. I believe you've been misinformed. He tapped the screen. Photos bloomed into view. Bodies. Blurred backgrounds. Controlled angles. Professional documentation. My lungs locked. There, on exposed skin, were markings burned and inked together. Claw shapes. Tooth impressions. Ritual lines intersecting in a twisted approximation of something achingly familiar. Pack marks. I schooled my face fast. That's not mine, I said flatly. I didn't say it was. But you're thinking it. I'm thinking whoever did this knows pack ritual structure, Simon replied. And ritual tattooing? I snorted. So does half the underground. Not like this. He zoomed in on one mark. The angles were wrong. The flow was off, like a song played by someone who'd heard it once, years ago. An imitation, a ghost. Where were these taken? I asked before I could stop myself. Simon watched my reflection in the tablet glass. That's already more engagement than I expected. I met his eyes. 5 minutes, Drake. 4 victims, he said. All unregistered omegas. No pack protection, no defensive wards. Each body marked the same way. The press has no idea what to call it yet. And you thought of me, I said quietly. Yes. Because someone wanted me to be thought of. I stepped back, the ash scent thickening in my throat. I don't consult anymore. Simon studied me, not aggressively, not accusingly. Like he was trying to solve a problem that didn't want to be solved. You're former pack control, he said. High clearance, field trained. Your resignation file is incomplete. My jaw tightened. And yet here I am, I said lightly. Retired, drawing pretty pictures. Living the dream. Hound -7, he said. The name landed like broken glass. I laughed, sharp, defensive. You pull that out on everyone, or am I special? His gaze didn't waver. Your reaction suggests relevance. Or trauma, I shot back. Those get confused a lot. Silence stretched. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. I'm not forcing anything, Simon said at last. I want insight. Context. That's all. And when I say no, then I'll respect it. A pause. And put you under surveillance. Ah. There it is. For your safety, he added evenly. And others. The ash smell shifted, hotter, almost metallic. I straightened. You don't know anything about my safety. I know someone out there is using obsolete packmarks as a calling card, Simon said. And I know the kind of people who do that don't stop. He slid the tablet closer. One of these marks, he continued, matches a symbol recorded in a sealed control archive, a unit designation, Hound -7. My heartbeat thudded once. Hard. That unit doesn't exist anymore, I said. No, Simon agreed. It doesn't. Our eyes held. For a moment, for a dangerous, complicated moment, the shop felt too small. The wards hummed softly. The rain pressed against the glass like listening ears. You should leave, I said. I will. Simon stepped back toward the door. Then paused. But I'll be back. Don't. Another flicker. Something like regret. When people start smelling like ash, he said quietly, it's usually because the fire isn't done yet. The bell chimed as he left. I locked the door with shaking hands. The ash stayed. I told myself I was done thinking about Simon Drake. This was a lie I repeated often, and with remarkable creativity. After he left, I shut down the shop like something contagious had walked through it. Curtains drawn. Lights dimmed to their lowest safe glow. I redrew the inner wards by hand, slow and deliberate, chalk biting into the floor with a soft scrape. The circles under the furniture pulsed brighter, reactive, concerned. Relax, I muttered. It's just an alpha, with a badge and terrible timing. No one laughed. The closed hall of the salon felt too quiet, the air taut, like a held breath. The ash scent lingered in spite of everything. Obedient incense, antiseptic. Rosemary oil. Threaded through them like a stubborn memory. I packed my tools faster than usual. Needle casings clicked too loudly. Metal trays rang when I set them down. Control, I reminded myself. This was always about control. I finished, locked up again, and went home. The walk to my apartment took 7 minutes. 6 if I was running. 10 if I was pretending not to notice the man across the street who hadn't moved once in that time. I didn't look at him. I climbed the stairs to my building, jiggled my keys and felt it, the faint prickle at the base of my skull. Not word breakage. Not hostile intent. Observation. I counted breaths until I reached my door. Inside, the apartment smelled like old paper, black tea, and the faint ozone tang of warded glass. Minimal furniture. Clean lines. No rugs. I liked to see the floor. Every doorway carried etched sigils subtle enough that guests noticed them only when they didn't trip the threshold by accident. I peeled off my jacket and froze. My reflection in the mirror by the door shimmered, not visually but wrong, like heat distortion over asphalt. I leaned closer, heart stuttering. Nothing on my face. No burns. No marks. Get a grip, I whispered. Sleep came badly. It always did when my past started tapping on the glass. When I finally slipped under, it wasn't gentle. Static howled in my ears. The weight of a tactical vest pressed against my shoulders. My hands smelled like oil, and metal, and sweat. Got movement? South corridor? The radio crackled. Someone was shouting. Luca's laugh cut through it, crisp and reckless. Told you that ward wouldn't hold. Luca, pull back, I'd snapped. That's an order. Fire answered instead. The heat hit all at once. White hot. Skin screaming. The roar drowned out comms, drowning out names. I could smell fur burning. Plastic melting. Ash clogging my mouth. I tried to move. Couldn't. I woke choking, lungs burning like I'd inhaled the dream whole. My room was dark. Silent. Safe. I folded forward, elbows on knees, breathing through teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. 5 years, and my body still thought it was dying. When the shaking eased, I glanced at my hands. That was when I saw it. A faint gray line curved along the inside of my wrist, just beneath the skin. Thin as a hairline crack in glass. When I pressed a thumb to it, it warmed, and a whisper of ash scent flared. No, I breathed. I flicked on the light. The mark didn't vanish. It wasn't a tattoo. It wasn't an injury. It was there, like something settling into a place it remembered. A pattern teased itself at the edges of my perception, unfinished, wrong. Familiar but distorted, an echo. I scrubbed at it until my skin flushed red. Nothing changed. The next day, the tale didn't even try to be subtle. The same jogger. The same sedan. Different faces, same posture. SIU, trained enough not to spook civilians. Sloppy enough to insult me on principle. I flipped them off without looking. At the shop, my wards hummed uneasily, reacting to something inside the barrier. The mark pulsed faintly when I inked protective glyphs on a paying client. It warmed when I focused too long. That night the dreams came again. Only this time Luca looked at me through the smoke. You left us, he said, not accusing. Hurt. I tried to get you out. You ran, he whispered. I woke with the taste of ash on my tongue, and the certainty curling cold in my gut. This wasn't someone copying old pack work. This wasn't a fan with a grudge, or a half-trained ritualist playing wolf. Whoever was doing this knew the feel of the marks. The intention. The weight of wearing them. They knew me. I stood in my bathroom staring at the mark beneath my skin, and finally admitted. The thing I'd been avoiding since Simon Drake walked through my door. The past wasn't knocking. It had already crossed the circle. I decided to run at 2:14 a.m. That was the moment the ash mark beneath my skin burned hot enough to wake me from a dead sleep, and the wards on my apartment windows answered. Not broke. Answered. Something outside had tested them. Light as a fingertip. Curious. Intentional. I rolled off the couch, grabbed my go bag from under the table, and didn't bother pretending this was anything but what it was. A hunt. I was out the back stairwell in under 30 seconds, breath steady. Mind locked into old muscle memory I'd sworn I'd never need again. The city greeted me like it always did at night. Wet pavement, neon, reflections, engines growling low, and constant like a living thing. I cut left. Then right. Didn't look back. The ash mark pulsed, warm and insistent, like a compass needle spinning. You're not real, I muttered under my breath. You're not happening. The streetlights flickered as I passed. Not coincidence. Not anymore. I ducked into a narrow alley, boots skidding slightly on damp concrete, and vaulted a low fence without breaking stride. Footsteps echoed behind me. Plural. Not human pacing, too measured, too comfortable with the dark. They're letting me hear them. A detached part of my mind observed. Pressure tactic. Fine. I could play. I cut toward the metro entrance, slipped past 2 late-night commuters, and vaulted. The turnstile with a whispered glyph that blurred me just enough to not be memorable. The underground air rushed up to meet me. Oil, dust, electricity. I took the stairs 3 at a time, hit the platform, and froze. No trains. Just open space and sound carried clean and sharp. I felt him before I saw him. Alpha presence. Not flared, not aggressive. Anchored. Controlled. Simon Drake stood at the far end of the platform, coat gone, suit jacket open like he'd been running. His eyes snapped to mine instantly. For a split second, the world narrowed to the space between us. Don't, he said. Not loud, not commanding. Just there. I spun, and ran. The chase broke fully after that. I cut through maintenance corridors, emergency stairwells, burst back into open air 3 blocks over. Someone leapt across a rooftop behind me, light, fast, not Siu. That's not Drake's people, I realized with a jolt. Glass shattered somewhere to my right. The ash mark flared hard, pain slicing sharp and bright, and I swore. As I changed direction mid-stride, nearly slamming into a fire escape. I felt the moment Simon did too, the shift, the wrongness. He shouted my name. That got me to turn. He was on the roof opposite mine now, rain plastering dark hair to his forehead, breath ragged for the first time. Not chasing like a predator. Intercepting. Get down, he yelled. Ash, this isn't. Something moved behind him. Fast. Too fast. I threw a reflexive ward without thinking. The sigil burned out of my hand, snapping into place between rooftops just as a blurred shape hit it hard enough to scream. The sound wasn't human. Simon didn't hesitate. He turned, weapon already in hand, not aimed at me, not even at the thing thrashing against my magic, but positioned exactly where it needed to be if it broke through, covering me. I felt that realization land in my chest like a dropped weight. He didn't want to catch me. He wanted whatever was hunting us. The thing tore itself free of the ward with a sound like tearing paper and vanished over the edge of the building, gone before either of us could follow. Silence crashed down hard. Rain soaked through my clothes. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Simon exhaled slowly, never taking his eyes off the space where the thing had disappeared. That wasn't Siu, I said hoarsely. No, he agreed. It wasn't. We stared at each other across the gap, city noise rising back up around us, sirens, traffic, voices. Normal life, stubborn and oblivious. You shouldn't be running alone, he said finally. I laughed. Too sharp, too fast. You shouldn't be stalking people through their trauma. I'm not stalking you, he snapped back, a flash of heat cracking through the ice. I'm trying to keep you alive. That's not your job. It became my job the moment something marked you. I flinched. He noticed. Of course he did. The ash mark throbbed under my skin, furious and alive as if it resented being discussed. I don't need protection, I said. And I don't need an alpha deciding what's best for me. Simon took a step back from the edge, not retreating, just giving space. You don't trust me, he said. It wasn't a question. I don't trust anyone, I shot back. That's kind of why I'm still breathing. He held my gaze, rain streaking down his face, eyes unreadable. Running won't stop this, he said quietly. It already knows where you are. Then it should try harder. I turned before he could say my name again. I ran, and for the first time since this started, the ash smell followed close behind. I should have turned around the second the air changed. City smells thin out at the edge of the industrial district, less coffee and exhaust, more rust and wet concrete. But under all of that, as I cut through the broken chain link and slid into the old loading bay, there it was again. Ash. Not the phantom note that clung to my shop. This was heavier, settled, like it had soaked into the bones of the place and never really left. Home sweet crime scene, I muttered. The old Hound -7 safehouse squatted behind a shuttered factory. A slab of poured concrete pretending to be an abandoned storage unit. The roll-up door had been welded shut after the incident, at least according to the report I'd never officially read. Reports lie. Bolts don't. The welds were cut. Recently. My pulse kicked up. I ran fingers along the metal, feeling the clean edges where someone had sliced through with something hotter than a blowtorch. There were faint scorch marks, black against gray. I forced a breath, tasting iron and old dust. You're being dramatic, I told myself. Could be teenagers, could be urban explorers, could be literally anything that doesn't involve undead ex-coworkers and ritual murder. The ash scent curled under my tongue, dry and bitter. Yeah. Even I didn't buy that. I pressed my palm flat against the door. The ward tattoo along my wrist warmed. Lines of ink waking up, humming against my skin. No active alarms. No live sigils. Whatever had protected this place once was dead now. Unlike some people. I ducked around to the side entrance, an unmarked steel door tucked under a crumbling overhang. The keypad had been smashed years ago. The lock, however, had a new faceplate. I smiled without humor. Clever boy, I whispered. I picked it in under a minute. The door groaned open. Inside, the dark felt thick, like something you could wade through. I flicked on the small flashlight clipped to my collar. The beam cut a narrow tunnel through dust motes. Concrete walls, no windows. The faint outline of old ward circles, painted along the floor and ceiling, half scrubbed, half burned away. A long smear of soot up one wall where the fire suppression system had failed, and the world had ended. My lungs forgot how to work for a second. Flash. Smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hands. The choking roar of flame devouring oxygen. Luca's voice over comms, sharp and calm. Room 3, breach on my mark. Ash, you're on scent, you... Static. I squeezed my eyes shut until the image dissolved. Not now, I whispered. Not here. I moved deeper into the main room. This had been our operations hub once. Hound 7's den. A big open space cut by low dividers, tables scattered with holomaps, weapon racks, gear lockers. Now it was a grave. Everything charred, warped, melted. The tables had collapsed into blackened skeletons. A desk lamp lay on its side, glass long since shattered, neck twisted like a broken animal. The air was still. Too still. I stretched my senses, the way they'd trained into me, scent first, then sound, then the skin prickle of active magic. No heartbeats. No breathing but mine. But there was something. At the far end of the room, past the burned-out lockers, faint light traced a circle on the floor. Not electric, not sunlight. The sort of low, guttering glow that meant a ritual had been done here recently and badly. I walked toward it, boots crunching on debris. The circle was drawn in what looked like ash and oil, charcoal gray streaked with something that caught the light like metal dust. The geometry was close to familiar: containment ring, 4 anchor points, central glyph. Close. Wrong. I crouched at the edge, careful not to disturb the line. Up close the smell hit harder. Not just burned wood, burned fur, burned blood. The tang of severed bonds. My stomach flipped. Someone had spliced our old Hound 7 ward pattern into something else. The anchor symbols were ours, but twisted. Angles reversed. Lines extended. A predator wearing our skin. My fingertips buzzed. No black market hobbyist did this, I murmured. You knew exactly what you were breaking. I let my gaze travel to the central glyph. There. That little flourish on the right curve. The extra loop on the third line. Completely unnecessary. Luca had always added those tiny, ridiculous signatures in the middle of otherwise textbook perfect sigils. Style points, he'd said once, when I'd called him on it. We'd been in this very room, crouched over a training circle. Magic's like handwriting, Ash. Copy all you want, but there's always a quirk that's just you. He tapped the loop, grinning, a dimple denting his left cheek. This one's mine. My throat closed. I hadn't spoken his name out loud in 5 years. I'd built an entire life on not letting it escape. Now it floated up, unbidden, inevitable. Luca, I whispered. The sound seemed to get swallowed by the concrete. I stared at the loop until my eyes burned. The reports had said no survivors. The flames had said everyone out or no one ever again. The enormous crushing silence afterward had said you're alone now. But this circle said something else. This circle said, I was here. And I remember. A cold shiver ran down my spine, followed by something worse than fear. Hope. Twisted and ugly and immediate. What if he's alive? What if he's the one writing on walls, carving half-correct sigils into dead omegas, dragging me back into the fire? The answer should have been simple. If it was him, I'd find him, punch him, drag him back, and demand to know why he thought resurrection plus serial killing was a good group activity. But my traitor of a heart remembered late-night stakeouts, Luca's shoulder warm against mine, in the van, his voice cutting through the noise, with a joke at exactly the right moment. Relax, Ash. You worry enough for all 7 of us. Let somebody else crash the mission for once. He'd said it like we were invincible. Like we had infinite missions left. We hadn't. Around the edge of the circle, more marks scored the concrete. Claw scrapes. Deep. Deliberate. I bent closer. 4 parallel grooves, then 3, then 4 again. A pattern. A code we'd used once, tapped on walls when comms went out. Alive. Move. Follow. My skin went cold. This isn't a taunt, I muttered. It's a breadcrumb trail. Or both. With Luca, it was always both. He loved drama even more than I did. I straightened, suddenly aware of the hollow ache in my chest. Of how loud my heartbeat sounded in the empty room. Of how much, despite everything, some traitorous part of me wanted this to be him. Because if Luca was alive, then maybe I hadn't failed completely. Maybe Hound 7 hadn't been entirely erased. Maybe my pack didn't end in that fire. The longing hit so hard it left me dizzy. I braced a hand on the wall. The concrete was cool under my palm, rough with old paint. Faded symbols flaked away at my touch. Protective sigils we'd once drawn. Half jokingly, half serious, like carved initials in a school desk. We were here. We mattered. We're not kids anymore, I told the wall, voice low. And this isn't funny. I took one last look at the circle, memorizing every line, every wrong angle. Then I pulled out my phone, snapped a few photos, and traced the little loop with my eyes. Okay, Luca, I said softly. If you crawled out of whatever grave they threw you in, and decided to start a murder art project with my name on it, I slid the phone back into my pocket. I'm coming to find you. And I'm bringing the ice-eyed detective you just insulted. The ash in the air seemed to stir, like the room was holding its breath. I turned and walked out, boots crunching over the bones of our old life, packless and alone and more sure than ever of one thing. Whatever had burned 5 years ago hadn't stayed dead. And neither apparently had we. I didn't get caught. That's the story my pride tells. What actually happened is that my body finally reminded me that it's not an idea. It's a system. And systems fail when you push them too hard for too long. The world narrowed to tunnel vision somewhere between the abandoned factory and the third alley past it. My legs turned cooperative instead of precise. The ash mark burned like a warning flare under my skin. Then the rain stopped. I blinked. A roof. Fluorescent lights. Someone saying my name like it mattered. "Don't fight it," a calm voice said close to my ear. "You're safe." Absolutely not convincing. But my knees buckled anyway. When I came back to myself, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not ash. Clean antiseptic. Soft ozone. Something floral underneath. Too controlled to be a hospital plant. "CU. Of course it is," I rasped. "Welcome back." I cracked one eye open. White ceiling. Too clean to be city hospital, too quiet to be emergency. I turned my head and immediately regretted it. Simon Drake was sitting in a chair beside the medical bed, jacket off, sleeves rolled to mid-forearm. He had a cup of something steaming in his hand that smelled suspiciously like tea. "You fainted," he said. "Twice. The second time you made it difficult." I scoffed weakly. "I don't faint. I retreat strategically. Your vitals disagree." I pushed myself up onto my elbows. A mistake. The room wobbled, and I had to close my eyes until it behaved. "You took me," I said, accusation threading through the words. "I picked you up off the pavement," Simon replied evenly. "You were seconds from collapsing into the path of a moving vehicle. You can yell at me later." I hated that he was right. I hated more that the ash mark had cooled, quiet now, like it approved. "Where am I?" I asked. "CU Medical," he said. "No restraints. No sedatives beyond electrolytes and something for shock. You burned through whatever you were running on." I glanced down. Clean clothes. 4 taped neatly at my arm. No cuffs. Fair. "You had no right," I said anyway. "I had every right," Simon shot back. Then, softer, "and I didn't use it." Silence settled. Heavy, but not hostile. I exhaled slowly. "You followed me." "Yes." "Not very subtly." "No," he agreed. "Because something else was following you." That snapped my eyes open. "The circle," I said. "At the safe house." His jaw set. "You went back. You welded the place shut. That should have been a clue. You could have died." "So could 3 omegas an hour ago," I snapped, then winced at the echo of it. Simon didn't rise to it. He set the cup aside and leaned forward slightly, forearms braced on his knees. "Tell me what you saw," he said. I surprised myself by doing it. Not everything. But enough. The twisted marks. The signature loop. The claw pattern. The name I hadn't said out loud until a few hours ago. "Luca," I finished quietly. "He was one of mine." Simon didn't interrupt. Didn't doubt. Just absorbed it like data he trusted. "When you walked into my shop," I said, "you couldn't read me." His eyes flicked up. Sharp. "You noticed." "I notice patterns," I said. "Yours broke when you looked at me." A beat. "You're right," Simon admitted. "You are the only person I can't get a clean read on." That landed heavier than I expected. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just a fraction. For someone like him, it was telling." "Because you're trained," he said finally. "Because your trauma response overlaps with your tells. And because every time I think I've mapped you, you change the variables." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "So, I'm annoying." "Exceptionally." Something eased between us. "Listen," he continued, tone shifting. "Less investigative, more honest. I don't want your obedience. I don't want a leash. If this is Luca, if he's using pack structures from the inside, then you are not a liability, you're a resource." I grimaced. "Charming." "I mean it," Simon said. "And I know why you ran. Control burned you, bad leadership, bad calls. You don't want to be ordered around by an alpha ever again." I looked away. He wasn't wrong. "So here's what I'm offering," he said. "A partnership. Temporary. You advise. You observe. You call it when you think we're wrong. No rank. No chain of command. Between you and me. And when your superiors ask why an unregistered omega with a criminally flexible relationship to ritual law is in your investigation room, I'll tell them you're difficult and invaluable. Which happens to be true. Despite myself, I laughed. It hurt, but it was real. And if I say no? I asked. Then I still keep you alive, Simon said simply. But I'll be doing it in the dark. I met his gaze. Saw no hunger there, no dominance push. Just focus, resolve. A strange, quiet respect. The ash mark pulsed once. Not pain. Acknowledgement. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, found the floor steady enough to trust. Not subordinate, I said slowly. Not asset. Partner, Simon agreed. I held out my hand. Temporary, I said. He took it. Firm, careful, warm. The first chain I didn't feel snap was the one I'd wrapped around myself. The CU archives smell like paper pretending it isn't scared of being forgotten. Old ink. Cold stone. A faint copper edge from protective wards layered so thick they hum in your teeth if you listen too hard. It's not a place meant for comfort. It's a place meant to contain things people regret learning. Simon led the way without speaking, his badge opening doors I used to run toward and now instinctively avoided. Down one level, then another, until the air cooled, and the light softened into that dim, respectful glow reserved for knowledge deemed dangerous but necessary. You keep the fun stuff in the basement, I muttered. Only the things that refuse to stay buried. That should have been a joke. It wasn't. We stopped in front of a sealed vault marked with layered sigils. Containment, memory dampening, ash suppression. My wrist tingled in response, the mark beneath my skin warming like it had found a distant relative. Simon noticed. You feel it? I feel like this place and I would hate each other on principle, I said. Open it. He keyed in the authorization and stepped back. The door whispered open, releasing air that smelled unmistakably of burned offerings and old blood scrubbed too many times to forget itself. Ash. The ritual storage room was small, circular, lined with shelves etched directly into stone. Bones in clear casings. Charcoal tablets. Jars filled with gray-black powder, labeled in meticulous handwriting. Simon turned on the central console. Holographic text bloomed into the air. Right of Cinerus return. Status, prohibited. Recorded casualties, 100%. I swallowed. That's a resurrection ritual. No, Simon said quietly. It's a reconstruction. I scrolled through the data with shaking fingers. The ritual required 3 core components. Remains reduced to ash through incomplete combustion. A bound anchor, name, sigil, or bloodline. An emotional catalyst strong enough to overwrite death's resistance. Guilt. Rage. Unfinished bonds. Oh, I breathed. You don't bring someone back. You rebuild them around what burned hottest. Simon's jaw tightened. And if hatred is the strongest surviving structure, you get something that thinks it's fixing a mistake, I finished. The images shifted. Crime scene summaries, ritual residue scans, magical signatures. Every kill aligned with a correction pattern. Omegas taken because they fit a logic only the killer understood. He's not killing randomly, I said. He's correcting the world. Tightening loose threads. For the record, Simon said, the world does not appreciate being tidied up like this. I barely heard him. Because the last file opened on its own. Message attached. Recipient, Ash. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't do that, Simon said immediately, eyes flicking to me. I know. The room dimmed slightly as the projection stabilized. Ash motes lifted into the air, spiraling into a familiar shape. Broad shoulders. Cocky slouch, head tilted like he already knew something you didn't. Luca smiled. Not the warm, lopsided grin from my memories. This one was too still, too sharp. His eyes burned, not amber, but something darker, threaded with gray. Hey, Ash, he said, voice echoing with layered harmonics no human throat should manage. You always were predictable. My mouth went dry. You're dead. Rude, Luca said lightly. I prefer returned. Simon shifted closer, not touching me, but close enough that his presence anchored the room. I didn't look at him. You left us, Luca continued. You smelled the breach. You knew the wards were failing. I called for evacuation, I said hoarsely. You didn't answer. Oh, I answered. His smile sharpened. You just didn't listen. Behind me, a jar rattled on its shelf. I stayed, Luca said. I tried to hold the line. Someone had to. And you died, I whispered. For a while. He tilted his head. But death isn't the worst thing, Ash. Being abandoned is. The ash mark beneath my skin flared so hard I gasped. Simon swore softly. They're wrong, I said, more to myself than to the projection. The ritual, what you did, it warped you. Luca laughed. The sound cracked, like fire snapping through wet wood. I did what you were too afraid to finish, he snapped. I came back to fix it. To make the packs clean again. To stop weak bonds from snapping under pressure. You're murdering omegas, I hissed. I'm removing mistakes, he corrected. The same kind of mistake you made. The projection leaned closer, eyes locking onto mine. You should have burned with us. The room went silent. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing, too loud, too fragile. 5 years of carefully constructed distance collapsed into a single brutal truth. Luca didn't survive the fire. He survived the grudge. This isn't you, I whispered. Not all of you. His expression flickered. Just for a second. Doubt, or memory, or something dangerously close to pain. Then, it hardened again. I'll see you soon, Luca said softly. You always were good at following scent. The ash dispersed. The room lights brightened. Simon caught my elbow when my knees threatened to give. He blames you, he said quietly. I know. And you still went looking for him. I laughed weakly. Of course I did. He was my pack. Simon's grip tightened. Not restraining, just present. He's not what he was, he said. But he's not gone either. I stared at the empty space where Luca's grin had been. The illusion that the past stayed buried crumbled completely. My past wasn't dead. It was walking, burning, and very interested in finishing a conversation I'd tried to outrun for half a decade. The place Luca chose was exactly where he would have taken us back then. An abandoned industrial complex on the edge of the river, all rusted girders. And broken windows, concrete floors stained with oil and old rain. It had once processed something loud and dangerous. Metal, maybe, or chemicals. Now it processed ghosts. I knew you'd smell your way here. Luca's voice drifted from the shadows as I stepped inside. The ash mark beneath my skin burned, sharp and almost eager. Not pain. Recognition. I didn't answer. My boots echoed too loudly as I crossed the open floor, past collapsed scaffolding and the husk of a conveyor belt frozen mid-collapse. The air carried the same heavy baked-in scent I'd felt at the safe house. Ash. Guilt. Old fire. I brought company, I said instead. I noticed. Luca stepped into the light. For one disorienting second, my brain tried to pretend nothing was wrong. Same height. Same broad shoulders. Same familiar crooked stance, weight always on one hip like he was perpetually bracing for a joke or a fight. His dark hair was longer, tied back carelessly. His face, older, sharper but undeniably Luca. Then his eyes caught the light. Not amber. Not quite gray. Something burned through them from the inside, like embers under glass. You didn't need to, he said. This was between us. Simon moved at my side, weapon lowered but ready, presence steady and grounding without being invasive. I'm afraid that's not how serial murder works. Luca's gaze flicked to him, irritation flashing fast. Ah. The replacement. Simon stiffened. I felt it even without looking. I'm not anyone's replacement, Simon said coolly. Luca laughed, a sound that landed wrong, hollow at the edges. Sure you are. Everyone replaces the dead eventually. That's the problem. Cut it out, I snapped. You wanted me here. So talk. Luca smiled at me. Really smiled this time, soft and almost fond. That hurt more than the accusation. You always did hate preamble, he said. Fine. He gestured around us. Symbols burned faintly into the concrete. Ritual geometry sprawling outward in careful obsessive layers. I came back on purpose, Ash. My stomach dropped. You chose this? I whispered. I prepared for it, Luca corrected. Long before the fire. I knew the danger. I knew what the wards were pushing against. And I knew if someone went down in that place, death wouldn't be enough to hold them. My hands clenched. You never told me. You would have tried to stop me, he said simply. You were always the careful one. That's not a virtue, Luca. That's a warning sign. He stepped closer. The heat radiating off him wasn't physical. It was emotional, Raw and constant, like standing too close to a contained blaze. I didn't come back wrong, he said, voice tightening. I came back honest. Death burned away the lies, the fear, the hesitation, and the compassion, Simon cut in. Luca didn't even glance at him. Collateral. The word landed like a slap. Those omegas, I said, voice shaking despite my effort to keep it level. They didn't deserve this. They weren't part of us. They were weak links, Luca shot back. No pack, no spine. No willingness to hold the line when things get ugly. You murdered them because they reminded you of me, I said. The silence stretched, heavy and dangerous. Luca's jaw tightened. You left, he hissed. You walked away from everything we were. You let the system bury us. I survived, I said. There's a difference. Survival without loyalty is rot, Luca snapped. I came back to fix it. To rebuild, starting with you. The truth slid into place. Sick and cold. The ritual, I said slowly. It feeds on guilt. Luca's gaze sharpened. You always were smart. You're using me, I breathed. My guilt, my regret. Every time you kill someone and carve our marks into them, it pulls you closer, he finished. Yes. The ash mark flared, furious now, heat lancing through my arm. I staggered, and Simon's hand caught my elbow instantly. Don't touch him, Luca snarled. Simon didn't let go. You're hurting him. I'm reminding him, Luca shot back, of what we were supposed to be. I laughed then, a broken sound. We were never supposed to be a cult of fire and blood. We were a pack, Luca said fiercely. And packs don't abandon their own. You died, I said. You don't get to decide what loyalty looks like after that. Something cracked in his expression. Pain, sharp and sudden, breaking through the certainty. I burned, Luca said softly. And all I could think about was waiting for you to come back for me. The words hit harder than any threat. I screamed your name, he went on, voice trembling now. I held the line because you told me to. And then I realized, you weren't coming. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. I tried. You didn't try hard enough. The accusation wrapped itself around my ribs, tight and suffocating. Love, twisted into blame. Grief sharpened into a weapon. This ends, Simon said firmly. One way or another. Luca's attention snapped back to him, contempt blazing fresh. Stay out of this, Alpha. Simon stepped forward, unflinching. No. For a moment, the air felt like it might ignite. Then Luca looked back at me, and softened. You could still come with me, he said quietly. You felt it, didn't you? The pull, the warmth. We could build it again, a real pack, no more running. The offer settled between us, warm and poisonous. I closed my eyes, breathed through the ash stinging my lungs and the memories clawing at my chest. I loved you, I said, opening them again. But you're not bringing us back. You're burning everything that's left. Luca's smile faded. Then I'll keep burning, he said coldly. Until you stop hurting. He stepped back into the shadows, symbols flaring one by one as the ritual circle surged to life. This isn't over, he called. Not until the ashes stop answering you. And then he was gone, leaving the smell of fire and the echo of a bond that had turned toxic, heavy as a chain I'd never known I was still wearing. We didn't speak for 3 blocks after Luca vanished. The city crept back in around us, wet asphalt, distant sirens, the low murmur of life continuing despite our personal apocalypse. Simon didn't rush me, didn't fill the silence with strategy or reassurance. He walked at my pace, which at that moment was somewhere between shell-shocked and one bad memory away from bolting. The ritual space we ended up using wasn't grand. It was a maintenance floor in an old municipal building Simon had requisitioned, under the broad, generous umbrella of ongoing supernatural threat. High ceilings, bare concrete, windows bricked over decades ago. Clean enough. Quiet enough. Safe enough. Romantic, I muttered as I dropped my bag. Simon closed the door behind us, vault lock sliding home. I can dim the lights if it helps. Don't you dare. If this goes wrong, I want to see it. He huffed softly. That was new. We worked without talking at first. I chalked the circle. Steady hands, careful geometry. Not Luca's work. Mine. Real containment, real balance. Simon followed my instructions without commentary, placing anchors where I indicated, adjusting when I corrected him. Alpha, yes. But listening. That's the 4th symbol in a row that means don't explode, he noted dryly. The others mean explode later, I replied. Progress, not perfection. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. When the circle was complete, I stepped back and finally let out a long breath. The ash mark beneath my skin pulsed, then settled, as if waiting for my permission. This only works if you're honest, I said quietly. Simon met my gaze. Then go first. So I did. I didn't leave Luca, I said. I smelled the breach early and pulled back because the protocol said so. And because... My throat tightened. Because I was scared. I thought if I delayed evacuation, everyone would die. I chose the numbers over the people. Simon's expression didn't change. His breathing did. I watched the fire from 3 blocks away, I went on. I stood there until someone physically restrained me. I told myself there was no going back that would change the outcome. The ash mark warmed, but didn't burn. I survived, I whispered. And a part of me decided that meant I didn't deserve to. Silence filled the ritual space, thick but not suffocating. Simon stepped into the circle with me. You're wrong, he said simply. I laughed weakly. You don't even know the details. I know survivors blame themselves because grief needs somewhere to live, he replied. And I know you're not responsible for Luca choosing resentment over healing. That's easy to say when you didn't love him. Simon didn't look away. I don't have to love him to see that you're bleeding for a crime that wasn't yours. The words struck truer than I was ready for. Being part of this circle, I said, changing tack because I was dangerously close to crying, means the magic will read you, strip you down to intent. Good, he said. I'm terrible at hiding my intentions. I snorted despite myself. You're infuriatingly calm about this. You've been stabbed by your own past and used as a power source, Simon replied. Perspective. I gestured to the center of the circle. Then step fully in, palms open, and if you feel like screaming, that's apparently normal. That's reassuring. You say that now. He took position exactly where I indicated, movements precise but unafraid. The wards flickered, testing, tasting, and then accepted him. The circle brightened. I felt it immediately, the shift in pressure, the balance locking into place. For the first time since this started, the magic didn't push back. It listened. Simon inhaled sharply. So that's what it feels like to be seen. Uncomfortable? I asked. Surprisingly, grounding. I swallowed. This only works, I said, voice steady now, if you stay. If you don't pull away when things get messy. I'm not going anywhere, Simon said. I believed him. The realization settled warm and startling in my chest. Trust, real trust, wasn't blind. It wasn't passive. It was an act. A spell you chose to cast, knowing it could burn you if you got it wrong. I reached for his hand. The ash mark cooled. For the first time in years, I wasn't standing alone in the fire. The epicenter was quiet in the way storms get quiet before they break. The ritual circle breathed, slow controlled symbols I'd drawn with hands steadier than I felt. The anchors hummed in harmony for the first time since I'd learned Luca had crawled back from death by clutching his grudge like a rope. Simon stood opposite me, palms open, posture grounded, his presence, a weight that kept the whole structure from tipping into obsession. Last chance to run, he said lightly. I shook my head. If I do that, the magic learns the wrong lesson. The ash mark warmed, then spread like a held inhale. All right, Simon said. Teach it something better. I stepped into the center. Ash rose. Not smoke, not flame, but a fine gray veil that threaded the air. The words came easily once I stopped fighting them. Not an incantation so much as a confession shaped into order. The circle answered with an even glow, power flowing inward instead of tearing outward. Luca, I said. My voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. You don't have to hold it anymore. The ash thickened, gathering until a figure took shape. He emerged coughing, one knee hitting the concrete with a dull crack. The fire in his eyes dimmed. Not gone but tempered, like embers banked with care. His shoulders slumped as if a weight had finally been set down. Ash, he whispered. I swallowed hard. I'm here. Luca looked around, confusion rippling across his face. The symbols, the anchors, Simon standing watch. His gaze snagged on Simon and held there for a beat, calculating, wary, then oddly relieved. You brought backup, Luca murmured hoarsely. Not backup, Simon said quietly. Balance. Luca barked a short laugh that dissolved into a ragged breath. Figures. I knelt in front of him, careful to keep the circle intact. Listen to me. The ritual you used, it rebuilt you around the worst moment you had, around the blame. That isn't justice, it's a loop. I know, Luca said. And for the first time since the projection, his voice sounded like his own. I know now. The ash thinned. The fire receded. I came back angry, he went on. I woke up with one thought, fix it. Fix everything you didn't. His eyes met mine, raw and lucid. I told myself the world was wrong so I wouldn't have to admit I was. My chest ached. You didn't fix anything, you made it hurt again. I did. He nodded once, accepting the verdict. And I used your guilt to keep the engine running. His lips twisted. You always did burn brightest when you thought it was your fault. The circle trembled, waiting. I should have stayed, Luca said softly. Not in the fire. After. With you. His gaze flicked to my wrist, glowing faintly. I could feel it every time you thought of us. It made the spell easy. I thought carrying it would keep you alive, I whispered. Carrying it kept me trapped, he said. Let it go. The words didn't absolve me. They didn't erase the screaming night, the smell of fur and plastic and defeat. But they opened a door. I exhaled and let the ash spill out of my lungs, not into the circle but away from it. I named the choices I'd made without decorating them in punishment. I named the fear without kneeling to it. The magic shifted, curious and attentive. Simon's hand closed around mine, steady. You're doing it, he said quietly. The circle brightened, then softened. Fire turning to warmth, ash settling into clean lines. Luca sagged, breath easing. Color returned to his face in small, human ways. He looked younger, somehow. Less sharpened by hate. I thought if I rebuilt the pack, he said, voice small now, I'd feel whole again. Packs aren't built from punishment, I said. They're built from staying. He smiled. Just a little. You learned that. Late, I admitted. Better than never. He glanced at Simon again, then back to me. He's good for you. I snorted through the sting in my eyes. Don't start. Luca's smile lingered. I don't have much time. The ash began to lift from the circle, thinning to a pale mist that drifted upward as if answering a call only it could hear. The anchors dimmed one by one. I'm sorry, Luca said. For the omegas. For using you. For turning love into a weapon. I felt the words land, not like a salve but like a truth finally setting down. I forgive you, I said. But I won't carry you anymore. Good, he breathed. Neither should you. The last ember in his eyes guttered, not extinguished but released. He looked lighter, as if gravity had loosened its grip. Tell them, Luca said, and I knew who he meant. Tell Hound 7, we mattered. I will, I whispered. He nodded then dissolved. Ash lifting into clean air, fire folding into memory. The circle went dark. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Simon exhaled and squeezed my hand. You let it go. I stared at the empty center, the guilt finally unhooking from my ribs. Yeah. Outside the night breathed on, indifferent and generous all at once. Ash settled into earth. Fire ended. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt the quiet after. The shop smelled different after the case closed. Not antiseptic and ash anymore, though I kept the rosemary incense out of habit, but warmer. Like clean ink and fresh paint and the faint electric promise of things meant to stay. I'd repainted the back wall. Not white, something deeper. Neutral without being empty. The old ward circles were still there, of course, just reworked. Balanced. Protective instead of reactive. I liked the way the light fell now. Looks softer, Simon said, standing just inside the door like he might be the one crossing a threshold. I glanced at him over my shoulder, needle humming in my hand. Careful. Compliments cost extra. He stepped inside anyway. The wards accepted him without comment. That still startled me. Case is officially closed, he said. The paperwork says the right of Cineris return was contained and neutralized. And the bodies? I asked. Given names, Simon replied. Given pack honors, not erased. Good. How does that make you feel? He asked. I considered it honestly. Tired, lighter. Annoyed that it took me this long? That tracks. I finished the line I was working on and leaned back, studying the sigil. On my client's arm, subtle, stabilizing, meant to help sleep come easier. It pulsed once, content. When I wiped my gloves clean and glanced up again, Simon was watching me the same way he had the first time. Only now there was no ice behind it. So, I said, rolling my shoulders. What brings a very busy investigator here in the middle of the afternoon? He shrugged out of his jacket. I was in the neighborhood. You were not. It's a very flexible concept. I smiled. You're becoming predictable. That makes one of us. I set up the next tray, catching my reflection in the glass, alive, unburdened. The faint ash mark on my wrist nothing more than a memory now. It no longer burned. It didn't answer. Are you staying? I asked, casual. For the appointment? He glanced around. I don't have one. I can pencil you in, I said. Consultation rates are reasonable. Simon leaned against the counter. I'm thinking of making this a recurring thing. I arched a brow. Careful. Regulars get noticed. Good, he said. I've spent a long time being invisible. That stopped me. I wiped my hands and turned fully toward him. There was no urgency between us now. No crisis. Just the quiet after. I'm not joining SIU, I said, because some truths needed regular airing. I won't be collared. Or classified. I know, Simon said. That's not why I'm here. And I won't run from it anymore either. Good. We stood there, a comfortable beat stretching between us. Coffee? I offered. I don't drink it. Tea? Twice daily. I snorted. You really are annoyingly consistent. He smiled. Real, unguarded. As I turned toward the kettle, the bell chimed and rain streaked the windows outside. Familiar, harmless, passing. The city went on. So did I. Some people burn and vanish. Some people stay. And this time, I let myself be one of them. I still smell ash sometimes. On cold nights. In old buildings. When rain hits warm metal and the city exhales something ancient and quiet. It doesn't make my lungs seize anymore. It doesn't drag me backward by the throat. Ash isn't a warning now. It's a reminder. The shop hums softly around me. Wards settled into a comfortable rhythm I built to last instead of endure. The old mark on my wrist has faded to a pale shadow. No heat, no pull. Just skin. Just history. I don't pretend the past didn't happen. Hound -7 existed. We stood the line. We failed and survived and paid different prices for both. I speak their names out loud sometimes, when I'm alone, and the night is gentle enough to hear them. It doesn't feel like penance anymore. It feels like keeping the right kind of fire. The bell chimes. I knew it, I say, without turning. Right on time. Simon's reflection appears in the glass, rain-spotted coat. Familiar smile tugging crooked at his mouth. You make it sound like a flaw. Consistency, I tell him solemnly, is a dangerous habit. He sets 2 cups on the counter. Steam curls upward, carrying the mild, comforting scent of tea. Courtesy of the place on 9th, he says. They're convinced we're married. I choke on a laugh. I don't remember agreeing to paperwork. They think it's romantic, he adds. Of course they do. We stand side by side, sipping quietly. Outside, traffic passes. Somewhere, laughter breaks and fades. The world keeps choosing to exist. You ever miss it? Simon asks. The edge? I consider the question honestly. The fire. The urgency. The pain that made everything feel sharp and alive. No, I say. I miss the people. Not the burning. He nods. Like that answer fits exactly where it was meant to. Ash settles softly in my chest. Not heavy, not choking. Just warm. Endings don't always look like closure. Sometimes they look like staying. And sometimes ash is what's left when the blaze has finally learned how to rest.